What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and today we're going to be talking about my experience with finance classes, and this is going to be undergrad finance classes. So if you're just starting college, or if you are in college getting a bachelor's degree, this is what I'm going to be talking about if you're taking finance classes. I know a lot of people ask me, is finance hard? I'm trying to switch from engineering or from a different major to finance, or some people are in high school trying to decide if they want to major in finance. So I'm going to be talking about, some of the things that I wish I had known before I started taking these classes, and some of the things that I wish I had done differently while I was taking these classes. All right, so the first thing I want to tell you guys is that a lot of people ask if, finance is hard, or just business, or just different majors. So this is going to depend on the professor, right? Because one thing I've learned when I was in college is that you have two types of professors. You have a professor that really wants you to know the information. So when they're giving you an exam or a test, they're trying to really help you make sure that you know the information, right? And you have a second type of professor who wants you to fail. When they give you an exam, they're trying to prove a point that you're not smart enough, right? So you have those two types of professors. So if you have the first one that really wants you to learn, that's willing to answer your questions, that's willing to have help you maybe outside the classroom during like office hours. All right, so if you have a professor that really cares about teaching you the information, not just testing you, you're gonna find every class easy. You're gonna learn so much. So one way to solve this is gonna be by using a website called Rate My Professor. So if you go to Rate My Professor, you're going to be able to look up the name of the professor and the class they teach, and you get to see what the past students have said, and they have like a 5-star rating. So they might have a 1 out of 5. That's not a good professor. If they have somewhere between a 3.5 to a 5, that's usually a pretty good professor, and it also helps to read the comments. That website is going to help you a lot to find those professors that are going to care about you actually learning, not just testing you to see if you know the information. All right, so when it comes to taking the specific finance classes, you're going to start with the basic finance classes, right? So introduction to finance, or whatever your college might call it, but it's going to be the basics where you learn how to, calculate interest rates, where you learn how to, just the basics of finance. And these are going to be small things. You're going to be introduced to a lot of formulas, whether they relate to corporate finance or investing. When it comes to investing, you learn, capital gains formulas. You learn, how to calculate the return on investments, the return on your stocks. And when it comes to corporate finance, you're going to learn how to calculate things like the earnings before taxes. You're going to learn all the ratios when it comes to how you can evaluate a company, such as the PE ratio. So these are going to be individual things which seem so redundant, right? Because it's a lot of formulas. All right, so when it comes to actually solving these problems, you can use a financial calculator, which does everything for you pretty much, or you can use Microsoft Excel, which you're more flexible using that, and you're going to be able to navigate through these formulas. All right, so one of the mistakes that I made when I was taking these basic finance classes was essentially study to pass the exam, not to really know the formula. So let's say I was learning how to calculate the present value. So I would essentially just learn it for the exam. Then after the exam, I would, forget the formula. So I did this for a lot of formulas that I was learning. I was passing the exams, obviously, because I was memorizing the formulas for the exams. And then after the exam, I would forget because there's so many formulas that you're going to be introduced to. All right. So the reason why this was a mistake is because finance classes build on top of each other, right? So when you're taking the basic finance class, you're going to be covering, corporate finance, investing, pretty much everything in finance, but you're going to be covering, the things that bring it all together, right? So if you are, if it's related to corporate finance, you're learning about the income statement, the statement of cash flows, and other financial documents that are used to evaluate, a corporate company, right? You might be looking at how to finance a company, right? Should you take out a loan, which is debt, or should you raise equity? So in basic finance classes, you're going to be covering the formulas that you use to come up with, to make those decisions, right? So when you start taking advanced finance classes, for me, the first advanced one I took was Introduction to Corporate Finance, right? So this was solely focusing on corporate companies, right? All right, so one of the things that was covered was when it comes to financing a company, right? Let's say you start a company and you want to decide, should you take out a loan to finance your company, or should you raise equity, which is pretty much selling parts of your companies to raise money. So to make a decision based on this, you have to be able to calculate, the cost of equity or the cost of debt. And this is when you have to tap into the basic finance formulas that you are learning, right? So you're going to be using those formulas to calculate, the equity, the cost of equity or the cost of debt. So when I started taking corporate finance, I was finding myself in situations where I knew that I had to use this formula, but I had no idea how to use it because I never paid attention. I never tried to remember the formula, right? All right, so the same thing applies to the investment side of finance. If you're taking the basic finance classes related to investing, you're going to be learning, if you want to, evaluate the company, you might look at the PE ratio. There's a bunch of ratios that you look at, but one of the big ones is the PE ratio. And you have to learn how to calculate that, right? Or you might have to calculate the beta of the stock or maybe the alpha. There's a lot of small calculations that you learn in introduction to investing. But when you start taking advanced investing classes, they're not going to ask you can you find the beta for this stock? It's going to be bigger questions like, is this a good investment and why? So that's when you have to tap into those basic skills, right? You might be, well, the PE ratio looks like this and the industry average looks like this. So that means this company is undervalued. And also the beta is, close to the market beta. So it's not a risky stock, things like that. So you have to tap into those. All right. So when it comes to finance, you really have to understand the basics because everything builds on the basics. Everything on top you can learn. You don't have to put in as much effort, but the basics are what's going to really build you up, or that's going to build your knowledge. That's going to make you be able to understand what, the bigger questions you're going to be asked, right? I left out money and banking. So if you're taking a basic finance class related to money and banking, you're going to learn, how to calculate interest rates. You're going to learn how to calculate compound interest, right? And when you are taking exams on those classes, you're going to get questions like, well, you're going to get a question like Nash had $30 in the bank account and he was compounding for 20 years. How much does he have, right? So that's a basic question. Now, when you move on to classes like money and banking, you're going to be looking at this in a bigger perspective, right? You might say the bank took a loan from this and, it gets more complicated, but those basics will help you really understand what they mean. All right. So the second and last biggest thing I learned in finance was going to be accounting is very important. So if you look at both finance and accounting, these are related. Let's say, for example, we're doing corporate finance and I'm trying to decide to see if the company is a good company to invest in, right? I'm an investor. I'm trying to, put my money in a company. What am I going to look at? I'm going to look at the income statement, right? And where does the income statement come from? It comes from accounting. So when I say the basics of accounting, I just mean the financial documents, right? You're looking at the income statement, statement of cash flow, balance sheet, and there's a lot more, but those are the ones I can remember right now. But essentially, let's say I'm an investor, I'm looking into investing into a company, and I'm going to look at the income statement, right? I'm going to look at, is this company making money? And I'm going to get that information from the income statement, right? Or the profit and loss statement. And you're also going to be able to find the expenses that they have. And let's say I'm done with that, right? When I look at the balance sheet to see the assets they have and the liabilities they have, right? So all these documents come from accounting, but you're not going to be able to fully understand these documents if you do not know how to put them together. So that's where basic accounting, when it comes to those financial documents, is important. If your college does not allow you to take a basic accounting class when you're a finance major, I recommend just going on YouTube, learn how to put together the financial documents. So once you learn how financial documents work, whenever you're in finance trying to read the document, you're going to be able to understand where the numbers are coming from. And those are the two biggest things I learned while taking finance classes. And those are definitely going to help you. The more you understand those things, it's going to be a lot easier for you, especially if you're not, business savvy, or if you don't have any finance background and it's your first time, going into it. Definitely use those things. They're going to help you. And also, we're almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is crazy. But make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.